What if the biggest lie in motorsports is that recovery is about toughness? Because toughness gets you back in the car. It's actually physiology that determines how quickly you heal once you're there. At Michigan, Christopher Bell experienced one of the hardest impacts recorded in the next gen era, a violent hit, a fractured wrist, and yet just days later, he was back behind the wheel competing at one of the most physically demanding tracks on the schedule. And watching that unfold raised a fascinating question for me. What actually determines recovery speed? And more importantly, can we build a physiology that recovers faster before injury ever happens? Because eventually every competitor faces it, whether it's a crash, a fracture, a surgery, a strain, a setback. And when it happens, the conversation isn't not about speed anymore. It then becomes about recovery. So we're going to break that down in today's episode. Let's dive in. Yes, welcome back to Breaking Boundaries for Champions, the only high performance health podcast built specifically for motorsports professionals. I'm Jeffrey Mort, your personal high performance health engineer and founder of Victory Lane Wellness. And if you're the kind of person who's committed to protecting your health, your performance, your career, and ultimately your legacy, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Today, we're talking about something every driver, crew athlete, owner, and executive eventually faces: rapid recovery. Not medical treatment, not diagnosis, not rehabilitation. We're talking about creating the optimal internal environment for healing, for adaptation, and return to performance. Because the body heals. The question is, how efficiently? You see, most people think recovery starts after the injury. Break the bone, fix the bone. Wait, recover, return. Simple, right? But what if recovery actually starts years before injury ever happens? Let's look back at some recent events in motorsports. Connor Zilisch breaks a collarbone after falling from Victory Lane. Brad Keselowski in the offseason slips on the ice and breaks a femur. Christopher Bell takes a massive impact and fractures a wrist. Injuries happen. They're part of the game. But here's the fascinating part. Not everybody recovers at the same speed. And that raises a much more interesting question. What separates the athlete who bounces back from the athlete who struggles? What if recovery isn't determined solely by the injury? What if recovery is heavily influenced by the terrain the injury lands in? Because injuries happen above the surface. It's the healing that happens below the surface. And the quality of that terrain, it determines a lot. You can have the best orthopedic care in the world. You can have the best brace, cast, therapy, rehab, and medical team. And don't get me wrong, those things matter. But the body still has to do the rebuilding. The body has to create new tissue. The body still has to regulate inflammation. The body still has to remodel bone. The body has to repair connective tissue. The body has to restore function. So the real question becomes, what kind of internal construction crew are you sending to the job site? Are they fully staffed, fully fueled, and working with premium materials? Or are they showing up late, underfed, overcaffeinated, dehydrated, and living out of a hauler snack drawer? Because it's clear that one of those crews builds faster than the other. So today we're going to go over the 7 pillars of rapid recovery. Rapid recovery pillar number 1, recovery starts on the plate. Let's start with some raw truth here. You cannot out-supplement a poor diet. I've said that time and time again. And I know that's not the sexy answer, but stay with me here because it gets much more nuance as we go through these pillars. It's certainly not the answer supplement companies want on their commercials, but it's true. Nutrition comes first. The body rebuilds from raw materials, and those raw materials come primarily from food if a person is eating the proper diet. And when we're talking about bone health, connective tissue repair, muscle recovery, and resilience, balanced nutrition becomes the foundation. Now, you'll hear people talk endlessly about calcium, but calcium is not the whole story. Because the real question isn't, am I getting enough calcium? The real question is, can my body properly utilize and retain the minerals it's already receiving? And that's a very different conversation. Protein becomes incredibly important here. Protein supplies the amino acids required for tissue repair. Protein also plays an important role in maintaining healthy phosphorus status. And phosphorus happens to be one of the primary minerals stored alongside calcium in the bone. And without adequate protein intake, recovery becomes much more difficult. Now, that doesn't mean that more is better. There's a balance here. And this is not impossible, but it's much more difficult because if you're trying to rebuild structure without enough building materials, and even if you've seen a race team try to repair a car without the right parts, you know how that goes. So there's a lot of starting, a lot of frustration, and someone eventually says something you probably can't put on the radio, or at least not on television. So now, when we're talking about diet and nutrition, we have to talk about carbohydrates because carbohydrates have been unfairly blamed for just about everything in modern health. But there's a vast difference between simple carbs and complex carbs. For high performance athletes, complex carbohydrates are not the enemy. They provide energy for tissue repair. They help replenish glycogen for energy, and they help prevent excessive stress hormone output. That's right. Complex carbohydrates buffer stress. So the goal is not low carb. That's not sustainable for most high output athletes. The goal is appropriate carb intake. There's a big difference there. And healthy fats, I want to talk about because those matter too. Foods like or I should say organic extra virgin olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, pasture raised eggs, and omega 3 rich foods can all support recovery physiology. Omega 3 rich foods, in particular, like wild caught salmon, sardines, anchovies, walnuts, flaxseed, and chia, support healthy inflammatory balance and healthy cell membranes. And I'm curious, how many of those that I just named are you getting in your daily diet? You can comment below on the podcast here. The truth is, recovery happens at the cellular level. This is the physiology that nobody is talking about. Healthy cells recover better. So most people think bone recovery equals calcium. More calcium, stronger bones. End of story. Well, not exactly. Calcium matters, but calcium needs a team. And bone health is not a solo act. Calcium is part of the team. Magnesium is part of the team. Vitamin D3 is part of the team. Vitamin K2 is part of the team. Zinc, part of the team. Phosphorus, part of the team. Protein, part of the team. Healthy hormones, part of the team. Mechanical loading is also part of the team. And hydration, we're going to talk a little bit more about hydration in a moment. And if one of those systems is off, the whole process can become less efficient. This is why brittle bones, poor tissue resilience, slower healing, and weaker recovery are not always simply random events. Now, to be very clear, a major crash can break anybody's bone. A 30G impact does not send you a polite text message first. But the bigger question is, are you building the strongest, most resilient structure possible before the impact ever happens? That's the high performance health question. So here's why magnesium matters. We're going to talk about one of the most overlooked minerals in sports performance, and that, yes, is magnesium. Most people think stronger bones simply require more calcium, and that's not exactly true. Magnesium helps to regulate calcium metabolism. It helps support muscle recovery. It supports sleep quality. It supports nervous system regulation. It participates in energy production. And in regards to bone health, magnesium helps keep calcium where it belongs in your bones. Because calcium in the right place is structure. Calcium in the wrong place can become a really big problem. And what I'm referring to is cardiovascular health. So the body is not looking for more of everything. Again, that more is better mentality is dangerous. The body is looking for balance, which is exactly why something like full spectrum magnesium often becomes one of our favorite foundational tools. This has three of the most researched and absorbable forms, which include magnesium citrate, magnesium malate, magnesium glycinate. And here's the kicker: you can eat all the right foods and take all the right supplements, but if you're not retaining those minerals due to things like gut issues or chronic stress, you're still operating with a deficiency. And that's why we test, because what is not measured cannot be optimized. You'll hear that echo through all of these podcasts. Our minerals and metals test, it's a simple hair tissue mineral analysis, can be completed right at home or even at the track. It gives us a much clearer picture of mineral retention patterns rather than guessing ever could. Because intake is one thing, but retention is another, and performance lives in that difference. Now, let me say something that might not be so popular. The long days, the short nights, 3 energy drinks, coffee replacing breakfast, living on airport and track food, none of those are badges of honor. That's not toughness. That's borrowing against your future recovery account. And eventually, the tax bill comes due. And that bill usually shows up as slower recovery, more pain, lower resilience, worse sleep, more inflammation, reduced focus, more irritability, and the classic line, I don't know what happened. I just didn't bounce back like I used to, or it sucks getting old. Well, the body has been sending invoices for years. We just keep tossing them into the glove box. Okay, rapid recovery pillar number two, balanced inflammation. Now, this is very important. Inflammation, it's not the enemy. You need it. You need inflammation. Inflammation is part of the healing response. If you injure tissues, your body uses inflammation to bring resources to that area. So the problem is not inflammation itself, the problem is uncontrolled inflammation. We always talk about healthy, balanced levels of inflammation. Unresolved inflammation is an issue. Chronic low-grade inflammation is an issue. Inflammation that never shuts off, that's an issue. Think of it like the safety crew. You absolutely want the safety crew to show up after a crash, but you don't want them permanently parked in the middle of turn 3 for the next 6 weeks waving flags at everybody. Inflammation, it needs to show up, it needs to do the job, then resolve. That's the key. At Victory Lane Wellness, this is why we pay so much attention to inflammatory balance. And it's also why we used advanced testing like the omega-3 and inflammation test, which also can be done right at home or right at the track, because your body's inflammatory environment is measurable. We can look at omega-3 status, we can look at omega-6 to omega-3 balance, we can look at arachidonic acid to EPA ratio. And this matters because a high performance body needs the ability to respond to stress and then return to baseline. For targeted support, one of the products we often use, in addition to a clinical dosage of omega-3, is a product called Inflamasoothe. Now, again, I'm not giving medical advice. We're not treating any injury here. We're talking about supporting a healthy inflammatory response with science-backed supplementation. Inflamasoothe contains ingredients like turmeric, boswellia, also known as Indian frankincense, things like bromelain, trypsin, ginger root extract, green tea leaf extract, holy basil, rutin, what else? Purple sweet potato root, black pepper fruit extract. And you don't need to know what all that means, but you could probably hear one common pattern is none of those have artificial chemical or pharmaceutical names. Those are all natural anti-inflammatories, and we're going to simplify why that matters. Turmeric is one of the most studied botanicals for supporting healthy inflammatory balance. Boswellia is well known for joint and mobility support. Bromelain and trypsin are proteolytic enzymes that can help support tissue recovery and healthy inflammatory processes. Ginger can support circulation and recovery, and green tea provides antioxidant support. Rutin is a bioflavonoid that supports vascular integrity, and bioperine helps it to improve the absorption of certain compounds. So again, the goal is not to crush inflammation. The goal is to help the body regulate inflammation appropriately because high performers don't need more chaos in the system. They need control. Rapid recovery pillar number three, cellular energy recovery. We're going to go one layer deeper here. A fractured wrist doesn't heal because time passes. No, it heals because the cells perform work. That line is very important there. A fractured wrist doesn't heal because time passes. It heals because cells perform work. And cellular work requires energy. This is where mitochondrial health becomes a major part of rapid recovery. Your mitochondria are often described as the power plants of the cell. And when the body is rebuilding tissue, managing inflammation, regulating immune activity, and repairing damage, energy demands go up. This is where products like Cell Boost become very interesting because Cell Boost contains ingredients like alpha lipoic acid, astragalus root, L-carnitine, CoQ10, TMG, which is trimethylglycine, PQQ, quercetin, resveratrol, and riboside chloride, which is used to support NAD-related cellular energy pathways. Now, NAD might sound familiar because a lot of people go and get NAD infusions, and that's not something that we recommend. We like to give the body the raw materials it needs to naturally produce what it needs, and so that's why we get into the things like the riboside chloride and things like that. So let's unpack that in normal human language. The coenzyme Q10 supports mitochondrial energy production. The PQQ supports mitochondrial function and renewal. And the L-carnitine helps to shuttle fatty acids into the mitochondria for energy production. This is all science-backed, my friends. Alpha lipoic acid supports antioxidant activity and cellular recovery. And the quercetin and resveratrol, those support antioxidant and healthy aging pathways. So essentially, this is an anti-aging protocol, if you will. This is a science-backed system. We mentioned, at least I mentioned, astragalus. That's traditionally used for resilience and it's an adaptogen, so it's very helpful for the body to support resilience. We'll leave it at that. The trimethylglycine supports methylation, which is part of many important biochemical processes in the body. Methylation is very important. And this is what I mean when I say recovery, it's not just rest. Recovery is work. And your cells are working, they're working for you. Your immune system is working, your mitochondria are working, your connective tissue cells are working, your bone cells are remodeling. They are working for you. So the question becomes, do they have the resources, those raw materials I mentioned, to perform that work efficiently? That is the entire high performance health conversation. Rapid recovery pillar number four, sleep is the original recovery technology. We have to cover sleep when we're talking about recovery here, because this may be the most overlooked rapid recovery tool in motorsports. And honestly, not just motorsports. Business owners, entrepreneurs, parents, executives, athletes, crew members, coaches, all of us. We live in a culture that treats sleep deprivation like a trophy. Those long days, short nights, grinding, pushing, never stopping. Let's call it what it is. A terrible recovery strategy wearing a fake mustache. Sleep deprivation, it's not a badge of honor. The body wears it like a physiological emergency. And, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I was in this camp a long time ago, and there's really two camps. You're either in the camp of the people that get enough sleep for their body to recover properly, or you're in the camp of the people who don't get enough sleep for the body to recover properly. And you can simply ask yourself, which camp am I in? And here's the raw truth. If you're sleeping just 5 or 6 hours a night, trying to recover from high-speed impact, chronic stress, travel, inflammation, racing, injury, training, and pressure, You're asking your body to rebuild the race car while the shop's closed. Deep sleep is when tissue repair accelerates. Growth hormone releases its highest during certain sleep stages. Immune regulation improves. Inflammation can be better controlled during sleep, during deep sleep. Hormone signaling improves, bone remodeling occurs, the nervous system resets, the brain clears metabolic waste. Recovery happens more during sleep than any other time of day. So, yes, things like PEMF, which we're going to talk about that technology in just a minute, is great. Hydrogen water is great. Magnesium is great. Nutrition matters. But the most powerful recovery technology ever invented is still deep sleep. Deep sleep is good for the body, and REM sleep is good for the mind, for the brain. And it doesn't come with a Bluetooth app, which is rude. Well, it does, I guess, if you're wearing an Aura ring and that has Bluetooth, but it works. Sleep works, and this is why we often utilize sleep optimization strategies and in many cases our ultimate sleep help protocol, because if sleep is broken, recovery is compromised, and some drivers and crew members are sleep deprived and they don't even know it. They've normalized dysfunction. They think feeling wired but tired is just race life. They think waking up refreshed is normal, or I should say unrefreshed is normal. They think needing caffeine to become a human before 10 a.m. is just adulthood. It's not optimal, my friends. It's a signal, and the signal deserves attention. Rapid recovery pillar number 5. We got to talk about hydration here. Most athletes think hydration means drinking more water. And some think that it's dumping, some craftily branded electrolyte mix into their water as well. Not exactly. Hydration is about fluid balance and mineral balance, cellular communication, nutrient delivery, and waste removal. Water matters, yes. Electrolytes matter, yes. Minerals matter, yes. But hydration is not just pouring water into the system and hoping for the best. That's not hydration. That's basically turning yourself into a confused aquarium. For motorsports professionals, hydration is especially important because you're dealing with heat stress, sweat loss, travel, caffeine, long race weekends, hotel air, airports, late nights, and sometimes alcohol. All of that can shift hydration status. And one recovery tool we've talked about before on the podcast is molecular hydrogen water. You see, molecular hydrogen, it's an interesting area because it may help support oxidative stress, balance, and cellular resilience. I like hydrogen water because it's simple. It fits into real life. And for drivers and crew members, recovery tools have to be practical. If it requires a 42-step ritual under a full moon while wearing linen socks, it's probably not making it into the race weekend routine. But hydrogen water is simple. Hydrogen plus cellular support, that's a useful combination. The beauty is it is portable as well. You can get a hydrogen water bottle. It can produce hydrogen water in under 4 minutes, or a higher quality in just about under 20 minutes, which is fantastic. Okay, rapid recovery pillar number 6, recovery technology. We're going to talk about PEMF and infrared sauna. The best race teams leverage technology. We know this. Human recovery should be no different. One of our favorite recovery tools is PEMF, which stands for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. A simple way to think about it, PEMF helps cellular communication, cellular circulation, recovery, and nervous system balance. Some people describe it like changing the battery of the human operating system. Now, can PEMF magically heal a wrist fracture overnight? No. This is not Hogwarts with a race suit. But can PEMF be used as a supportive recovery tool when appropriate? 100% yes. Many athletes use PEMF to support recovery, tissue resilience, circulation, and overall nervous system regulation. And when we're dealing with localized injury like a wrist, that can become a very interesting tool to discuss alongside proper medical care and rehabilitation. Now, infrared sauna can also be a useful recovery tool when appropriate. It may support circulation, relaxation, detoxification, and recovery, but of course, timing matters. If someone is acutely injured, overheated, dehydrated, or inflamed, we don't just throw them into a hot sauna like a leftover slice of pizza. We want to use strategy because more is not always better. What's better? Better is always better. Okay. And last but not least, rapid recovery, pillar number 7. I want to talk about something we don't discuss enough on this podcast. This is an ancient modality called Qigong. Qigong is actually one of the oldest forms of medicine that is still in practice today. I'm talking over 4,000 years of practice. And this one is very personal for me because back in 2014, I wasn't looking for Qigong. I was looking for answers. My health was not where I wanted to be by any means. My energy wasn't where I wanted it to be. I was miserable. My stress and mood wasn't where I wanted them to be. And I found myself drawn into Tai Chi and Qigong practices. Well, actually, they found me and I gave it a shot and there was no looking back. That was with I can say without exaggeration, Qigong was the lead domino that changed my life. And in many ways, I feel like it saved my life. Not because it was magic, not because I floated into the clouds and became a wellness wizard, although that would make a pretty good podcast thumbnail, but because it taught me how to breathe, how to slow down, how to actually move internal energy, and how to regulate my nervous system, how to reconnect with the body instead of constantly overriding it, which I was. Qigong, it's an ancient Chinese practice that combines breath, posture, gentle movement, mental focus, and most importantly, energy cultivation, which is what it loosely translates into. Qi, QI, stands for energy, and Gong means practice. So it literally translates into energy practice. It's been practiced for thousands of years, like I said. And what's interesting is that modern science now gives us language for many of the benefits people have experienced for generations. That's right. The ancient wisdom has been there all along. It's modern science that's finally catching up with it. There are so many research studies on Tai Chi and Qigong from places like Harvard and Stanford and all these, Ivy League institutions that are now recognizing the benefits of Qigong and Tai Chi for stress reduction, for balance, for mobility, for circulation, for nervous system regulation, for breath control, mind-body awareness, and for something like wrist recovery when medically appropriate. Gentle Qigong inspired movements can help encourage not only mobility and circulation and movement, but the movement of something that's called the synovial fluid through the joint. Synovial fluid, it's the lubricating fluid inside the joints. And gentle movement can help to circulate it and nourish that injury. Now, again, this has to be done appropriately. You don't fracture a wrist and then decide to perform dragon spirals like you're auditioning for a martial arts movie, but gentle, guided movement, when cleared by the right professional, can support mobility and connection to the recovering area. And sometimes the most powerful recovery tools are not the newest, sometimes they are the oldest. So let's bring this all together. And to be crystal clear, this podcast is not giving any medical advice. I don't claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. And if you're dealing with an injury, fracture, surgery, pain, any medical condition, work with your qualified medical team. But what we do at Victory Lane Wellness is we help high performers identify those underlying deficiencies, toxicities, physiological stressors that may influence energy, recovery, resilience, long-term performance, and yes, legacy. We use that 5R framework: reveal, remove, replace, rebalance, retain. First, we reveal what's actually happening. That may include functional testing like the minerals and metals test, the omega-3 and inflammation test, the stress, mood, and metabolism test. We look at hormone patterns, gut and metabolic markers, and then we remove what is creating excess stress on the system. That can include inflammatory foods, poor recovery patterns, blood sugar instability, environmental burden, which, I can't ring that bell enough about motorsports and the environmental burden, or lifestyle stressors as well. And then we replace deficiencies. That might include foundational nutrition. We might use something like the daily nutritional support powder or an activated multi omega-3 support, the vitamin D3, the full spectrum magnesium, antioxidants, and targeted tools depending on the person and the situation. Then we rebalance the system with sleep, central nervous system regulation, hydration, inflammation balance, movement, mind body recovery, and we retain that for long performance. Because the goal is not simply returning to the car, the goal is returning with a stronger system than you had before without delay. That is performance longevity, my friends. So let's bring this back to the driver. A driver takes a hard hit, the wrist is fractured, the pain is real, the schedule doesn't care. Pocono is waiting, then a demanding road course is waiting. The pressure doesn't slow down because the body is healing. So what do? You build the most efficient recovery environment possible. You follow your medical team's guidance. You support the body with balanced nutrition, optimize protein intake. You stabilize blood sugar. You support minerals. You test mineral retention. You balance inflammation. You sleep like recovery actually matters because it does. And you hydrate intelligently. You support that cellular energy. You use technology strategically. You regulate the nervous system. You move gently and appropriately. And you stop treating recovery like downtime because recovery is not downtime. Recovery is where the comeback is built. So the white flag is out. Here's the final lap. The best rapid recovery plan starts before the injury. Strong bones, balanced minerals, adequate protein, healthy inflammation, deep sleep, cellular energy, hydration, nervous system regulation, recovery technology, mind-body practice. This is how elite performers stack the odds in their favor. Not by hoping recovery goes faster, but by building the physiology that makes faster recovery possible. Because toughness may get you back in the car, but physiology determines how well you perform once you are there. If you're the kind of person who's serious about improving recovery capacity, optimizing resilience, and protecting your most valuable asset, you can apply to work with us at Victory Lane Wellness. Every enrollment supports Race for a Reason, providing advanced functional testing for chronically ill children through racing-related charities. You can find all that at victorylanewellness.com. I'm Jeffrey Mort. I will see you in Victory Lane. Bye-bye.